main female character is somewhat insufferable. Once they're like revving up, they are out of here. They can kind of also control the ravens. I would have cried afterwards if I could have. Hello y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over my Kindle Unlimited recommendations, so please get comfy, get cozy, and read the trigger warnings. I'm going to start off with my darkest recommendation on the list. Our first book is going to be Feathers So Vicious. Now this is a duology and it follows our main character, Galantia. She's a sheltered noblewoman who gets taken by these two raven shifters. Now I know that sounds weird, raven shifters, like what is that? And for those of you who haven't read the book, raven shifters in this story are people who have the ability to transform into multiple ravens. They can kind of also control the ravens separately and have them flying to different areas. So our main character, Galantia, is stolen by these two raven shifters. Now the reason why they took her, it has to do with her father, and it kind of kicks into action more unrest that occurs in this society. The raven shifters themselves are kind of treated as outcasts. They're judged, they're perceived really negatively. Now I'm sure it sounds like from the outside, for those of you who haven't read the story, that it's like fine, well and good, like there's tons of stories like this, but the one thing that makes this so different, especially in the dark romance category, is how vivid the details are when it comes to depicting the dark things that occur. So when I was reading this, I was like, whoa, that is painting too vivid of an image for me. I read the trigger warnings and I was like, wow, this is fine, like I can handle this. Like, and then I was reading it and I was like, make it stop. Like, what is this? Like, thinking about it, I almost want to cry because maybe I'm too soft. I have no idea. But any other dark romance book, fine. This one though, the details given, too much for me. Whenever it pops into my brain, I'm like, please erase it at once, get rid of it immediately. It seems like when it comes to the book Feathers So Vicious, there's always a split down the middle. You either love it and you want to continue the duology, what have you love Zander, or you're like me and you're like, please, like, I regret this, I take it back, please, like crying out for help because it has wrecked you so much. I'm in this camp, literally. I would have cried afterwards if I could have, but then I was like, no, this has already taken so much from me, I can't. The way they handle their own actions, the way that they treat the main female character, all of that is dark. But then the two main male characters, their pasts are dark as well. Our like essential main character of the story, he's been going through it, and I know I sound like I am such a baby complaining and crying about this for the past 3 minutes, but it was traumatizing. Do with that what you will. Read it at your own risk. I promise, I swear to God, if it wasn't so graphic and so vivid, I would continue with it because the story itself is actually depicted pretty coolly. The raven shifters, the magic system, was actually what drew me to the book initially and kept me reading because I was like, wow, I've never read a book where there's magical beings like this, and then I played myself entirely. But it's good, I swear. There's a cliffhanger at the end of the first book, and I know some people don't really vibe with that, but to me it just made me interested in the second book, but not interested enough to risk my mental health, so there's that. I would give the darkness rating a 6 out of 5, breaking the 5-star scale because of reasons that I've previously mentioned. Though they're dark, the spicy things, for one, don't happen often, and for two, take a little bit of build up to get to what somebody might be used to in books. Like, I feel like the spice is different than spice in Split or Swallow. So like there's spicy books like that where it's constantly happening and that's like a major undertone of the book, and then there's books like this where spice is used as a device to make you feel some kind of way, not just like spicily, but like emotionally and internally and like distraught, and all the emotions that the character is going through used in that way. Moving on, so the next book I'm going to recommend to you is going to be Call of the Sea. Now this is the third book in the series. There are 7 in total, but they're all standalone, interconnected books, so you can jump around. I accidentally started at the third and then I read the first to start over, and between the two, Call of the Sea, the third book, is going to be the darker one. So Call of the Sea follows our main love interest, Scylla, and then our other main love interest, Bay. And all of the books in the series are going to be MM. Scylla is a psychopath or a sociopath, and he stumbles across his professor, Bay. Now this is a student and teacher story. They're college students, and the professor is very close in age to the student. That's not even the worst of what happens though. That's not the reason why it's so dark. The reason why this is dark is for the same reasons as Feather So Vicious, except it's not nearly as vividly depicted. It's non-con and dub-con. That's the reason why I'm putting this as second darkest book that I'm going to discuss today. So as I was saying, it follows our main love interest, Scylla, and he decides to stalk and hunt Bay. He decides to do this because he figures out that Bay has been watching him and his twin brother, and Scylla is very protective of his brother. His brother isn't a sociopath or a psychopath like him, so he takes it upon himself to do what needs to be doing because his brother is too soft or too emotion filled to do anything about it or do the necessary things or the things that he views as necessary. So he's like, okay, I'll handle the crazed teacher that's stalking us, and I'll get it done. And upon doing this, of course they fall in love. Now, from what I've said, you can tell that Scylla is not the type of person that can fall in love. He's a psychopath, sociopath, what have you. So his version of love is a little bit different than a regular character you would read about, or like very different than Bay's, but it's there nonetheless. And it's really interesting reading about how he kind of slowly realizes that he's starting to care and change over time while other parts of him still hold the same. So there's like bits and pieces of him that are wrestling with each other throughout the story. I would say the story is medium paced. As for the darkness, I would rate it a 4 to 5 depending on what you're used to. If you're used to books like Feather So Vicious, it might land at about a 4 for you. If you're used to books like Phantasma, it might land at about like a 5 for you, just because of the non-con and dub-con aspect of it. And why this book was a little bit easier to swallow was because internally, when you're reading what's occurring with Bay, because it is dual POV, when you're reading what's going through his mind whenever Scylla is doing the things that he's doing, you can tell that Bay is okay with it, even though he tries to tell himself that he shouldn't be. The darkness is a 4 out of 5 depending on what you're used to. And then I would say the spice is a 6 out of 5, yet again a book breaking the 5-star scale, just because once they start, they do not stop. And I mean this in the nicest way possible, because like if you're looking for a spicier book, this would probably be the book for you. But yeah, it's pretty consistent. I would say like I would say that it definitely slowly picks up, but like once they're like revving up, they are out of here. The next book I'm gonna recommend is actually a fairy tale retelling. I feel like we went from like 100 to 0. This book is gonna be Wicked, Ugly, Bad. This is gonna be a Red Riding Hood retelling, and it follows our main character, Scarlet. She's been placed into a mental hospital with our main male character, Merrick Wolf. The romance is kind of balanced with the action, so it's their story of falling in love, breaking out of the mental hospital, and essentially saving the kingdom, or at least setting it on a path to where it can be saved. This is yet again another story that has interconnected standalones. The reason why I'm putting this with the dark fantasy romance Kindle Unlimited recommendations, quite the mouthful, is because although this book is meant to be a funny joke, there are some things that you could view as dark that Cinderella does and like some of the other characters, but it's not nearly as dark as the other 2 books previously mentioned. So this is, just to reiterate, a comedic retelling. So whenever you read parts like Cinderella's, if this is a book that you're interested in, just keep in mind that it is meant to be funny. The darkness rating is going to be at like a 3, just because of that Cinderella part. And then the spice rating is also going to be at a 3. This is definitely a lighter book, and it kind of reads as cozy. If you're used to more high fantasy and higher paced, fast paced books, I could definitely see it being a cozier style, especially because it's comforting in the sense that you know it's gonna happen. There are some surprising bits, like Cinderella's part, but it's not as crazy as it could be, like Feathers So Vicious. You guys are gonna get sick of me saying that every 5 minutes, but that book literally traumatized me. Oh my gosh. So this next book I just finished reading. It's gonna be Phantasma. So Phantasma is like the story Caravel, but it's obviously going to be a lot darker. I would kind of recommend reading this near November or October if you are a mood reader, but essentially the story follows our main character, Ophelia Grimm, very cool last name, and she is going to this dark haunted house to follow her sister and to save her. Within the haunted house, there are trials that occur that she has to participate in because she entered and she gave her name, and the trials are based off of the 9 circles of hell, I believe it is. I could be way off. And of course, she has to get the help of a phantom to save her. Now, our main female character, Ophelia, is a necromancer, so she does have some powers and abilities that help her out through the trials, but for the most part, she does kind of rely on the phantom. And of course, there's some romance that kicks up because of it. I would kind of lend this towards like a maybe recommendation just because the plot honestly had me feeling kind of all over the place, but it was still a great read. It was unique, and then I also will say something else. There is some OCD representation. Obviously, there are a lot of different types of OCD, but I would do some research beforehand just to make sure that it's not something that would irk you when you're reading it. Some people found the book therapeutic when they were reading it because they found that they had similar experiences to our main character, Ophelia, but then others were like, no, my experience is completely different, and that's totally fair because, as I said before, OCD looks different in people and it shows up differently for everybody. So like what might be the same for our made-up character Ophelia won't be the same for the real people of the world, and that's okay, but the representation of it is honestly pretty cool because I think more fantasy romance books should have things like mental health rep and all of that. For the darkness rating, I would rate this at about a 4 or a 5 depending. It is a little bit on the gorier side. You do have those notes of like making deals with the devils, and then there's also the fact that she's literally getting with a literal phantom. I would put the spice rating honestly about like a 4 or 5 as well, because depending on what you're used to, again, you probably would like give or take on that a little bit, but it was pretty consistent. And honestly, that was partially connected to one of the things that irked me during this book the most. It was the cold and hot, the back and forth drove me nuts. I was reading it and I was like, why is this even still a conversation? Like, what is the purpose? Like, you guys need to get it together, because I'm sick of reading like, no, we can't be together. No, we have to be together. It was just like, I was like, oh my god, come on. And if it sounded like I was getting a little repetitive saying that, reading the book, I swear they go back and forth at the very least 4 times, and that is a lot. And not to mention the ending was very rushed and also very predictable, but it was still a great ending. It was very adorable in the epilogue, so I will say that. Okay, off that note, moving on, my next book recommendation is going to be Nocticadia. And for those of you who have read it, you know the plot is just as back and forth and just as crazy and just as whirlwindy as the previous book mentioned, Phantasma. But I think the setting for both books actually are so amazing. I think Phantasma as well as Nocticadia were both so, I wouldn't say immersive, but like you feel it when you're there. The atmosphere is very prominent and it's not too in your face with the descriptors. So the setting is honestly something that I live for when reading these books, because I want to be like leaving the real world, so to speak, and these books offer that to me. For those of you who don't know about Nocticadia though, this book follows our main character, Lila, who is kind of enamored with her college professor, Devrick. I think that's how you say his name, but she's drawn to him, he's drawn to her, and it's about kind of them, what they go through. And it sounds boring, but wait, there's more. There are these little strange worms that are main plot points to the book. They're actually the entire reason why she goes to the college that she goes to, because they're the reason why her mom died. She remembered when she was younger these little black worms crawling out of her mom when she was passed out in the bathtub, and she wrote a little paper about it, got accepted into the college where Devrick works, and the little cherry on top, the department that he works in specializes in these worms. He himself is obsessed with the worms. So you get what I'm saying about them being a major plot point, or plot device, for lack of a better term. So they kind of both work together with the worms. There's like a lot of murder, mayhem, a lot going on. I wish that I could spoil just a little bit so you guys could grasp just how crazy it is, but I'm not gonna do that. You're gonna have to read it for yourself. But if you do, you have to be prepared for plot holes, a whirlwind plot, and then the teacher-professor thing. For the darkness rating, I would give it honestly about a 4, just because of how unhinged the characters in the plot are. As for the spice rating, I would give it about a 4. There are some strange things that occur and that are said, especially by the Professor Deverick, but I would still land it at about a 4, so slightly above average, and it's not really there in the beginning, but it does start to pick up pace as you read more. Now, the next book I'm going to recommend is going to be Nectar of the Wicked. This is part of the Deadly Divine duology, and it follows our main female character, Flea. She works as somebody who you would call when you want a good time, and our main male character happens to call upon her, and he kind of strikes a deal with her, like, I'll bring you back to the Fae world, or I'll take you there, and then I'll help you figure out who your parents are, we can do this, that, and the third, but you have to marry me. So it is kind of like the arranged marriage of convenience, perchance, because she is a changeling. She's been in the human world all her life, and she wants to get back. She wants to figure out who she is. She takes him up on his offer, and then they go. And the story is kind of about what happens, what she discovers about herself, how they fall in love, and then what she discovers about him, or I guess you could say what they discover about each other. The atmosphere of this is kind of good too, but it's not as good as books like Nocticadia and Phantasma. I would honestly give the darkness rating a 3, so it's kind of aligned with Wicked, Ugly, Bad. And then for the spice rating, I would give it a 4. It's another book where it's kind of lighter in the beginning and then it starts to pick up, but the difference between this one and Nocticadia, where there isn't really any spice in the first 25% of the book, tension starts to build up as soon as she and the Fae main male character meet each other. And then for those of you who already know about Nectar of the Wicked, or those of you who didn't really like it and found it kind of bland, I would recommend the book to you, Amid Clouds and Bones. This is a standalone series that follows yet again a Fae main male character and then a half Fae main female character. It is another arranged marriage trope, and it definitely is darker, in my opinion, than the Deadly Divine series. Maybe not around the second book, but definitely for the first book. I would say one thing to keep in mind when reading, or if you're interested in Amid Clouds and Bones, is that the main female character is somewhat insufferable. So she has the tendency to lay back and let things happen to her. She doesn't really do anything in the plot that changes things, and if she does, it's very few and far between. At the very start, in the very beginning, it's one of the reasons why I liked it, because it seemed like she was actually fighting back against the main male character, because they have known each other from a young age. They've been arranged to be married from a young age, so they've known each other from a young age. And she had always, fought back against him. She hadn't cared about how she should treat him because of what her parents or her older sister was saying. She would do what she thought he deserved. But then that starts to change, and although she's playing a game of survival, she still sacrifices parts of herself and her own desires just for the sake of safety. And I'm not saying that's bad, but it was a little boring reading from a character who just let everything happen to her and wasn't fighting to change things for herself. The darkness for Amid Clouds and Bones is going to be at a 4, and then the spice is going to be at a 4 yet again. There's going to be that tension, that yearning, and kind of like, I want her, but I don't want to want her kind of thing going on. And I would say the story is also a light enemies to lovers. Now that's going to be all, and just for the sake of elaboration, this is not going to be my end-all be-all list of dark fantasy romance Kindle Unlimited recommendations. I will be making videos going forward in the future as I continue to read more books and potentially making it a series. So, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. I had a really fun time making it, and thank you for watching.